Hi there again, and welcome to Lesson 2 of Module 5, where we are talking all about daily procedures in your flipped classroom. Oftentimes, the higher up you go in grade levels, like up into middle and high school, the less obvious daily procedures are, but that doesn't mean they aren't there. And if they aren't there, they totally need to be, especially in the flipped classroom. You are going to have way more open class time than you normally do. So putting these types of procedures in helps not only fill that time, but make sure that it's quality time spent on mastering the content. So in this lesson, you're going to learn some suggested daily procedures to incorporate into your flipped classroom, each with the goal of making sure you are both focusing on the content and your three main focus areas, as well as making sure you are engaging with or at least checking up on each of your students. So let's get to it. The first thing to consider is the first thing kids do when they walk in your room, which you're probably thinking, well, duh, Mandy, that's in every classroom. You're darn right it is. But I want you to hear me when I say you are free to beef up that welcome work a bit in your flipped classroom because you have more time. Say, what? You mean I don't have to rush through this awesome idea that I totally had to pare and water down to make it fit, and so it really wasn't all that awesome? So now I can really focus on it and it can be awesome again? Yep, that's exactly what I mean. I want you to think creatively here, but I also want you to be intentional. And finally, I want you to be practical. Make this a routine, not something you have to create brand new every single day. What I mean by getting creative is it doesn't, one, have to be a problem or a test-like question, although it could be. And two, it doesn't have to be the same thing every single day. I want you to focus on routines. But maybe that routine is that you have a theme for each day of the week, or you rotate two types of bell ringers. To be intentional, I want you to incorporate one of your three main focus areas here. For instance, if content-specific writing is a focus area, have them write every day. And make sure you check out Instagram or Pinterest for ideas here. I love seeing all the Post-it notes on the whiteboard, or even students writing all over their whiteboard. Students making anchor charts or writing on chart paper. All such cool ideas you can look for and incorporate. Lastly, and maybe most importantly, be practical. Make your welcome work a routine process that doesn't involve you running around just to make it function. My hope for you is that it works without you, so that you can be walking the room, talking with each of your students, looking at and stamping their notes, and catching up with any absent students. Or, I don't know, getting a drink of water, or picking up some copies from the copier. Just do your thing. Now, part of that bell ringer procedure could be my next daily classroom procedure suggestion, which is to think about how you are encouraging and sometimes even requiring students to ask questions. In the flipped classroom, one of the most common pieces of feedback I've gotten from students is that the one part they miss from traditional lecture is being able to raise their hand and ask a question as they have it, which I have to admit is probably one of the biggest parts that I miss too. However, my challenge to that feedback is that most students aren't comfortable asking those questions anyway, and you can totally incorporate aspects of the flipped classroom that gets everyone asking questions, not just the brave extroverts in the room. Likewise, those same students who give that feedback also say that having this type of procedure of being able to ask their teachers questions, time well spent in the classroom every single day, is one of the biggest reasons for their success in the course and one of their most liked features of the flipped classroom. So you need to think about and create a procedure that gets all students asking questions on a regular basis. One suggestion I've made in a previous lesson is to require students to write down at least one question for every set of notes they take. You could even make a cute little area on your guided notes with a fun frame or clip art of some sort where they have to put their question. And if they don't have one, they don't get a stamp. Or they could put these on a sticky note each night and as they walk in your room, put it on an interactive bulletin board you have or a certain spot on the wall. Another suggestion is to include a paragraph type question on your Google quizzes that tells students to write a question they have. Then pull those up in class, answering the really good ones. Another idea is to use a piece of chart paper or a section of your board or wall as what I've seen called, and have called it in my own classroom before, a quote, parking lot. Provide readily accessible sticky notes in your classroom where students can write down any question they have as they have it, and then put it in the parking lot to be answered at some point during the class, maybe at the end of the bell. There are so many other ways you can do this, but one idea I want to use is, and have used in some fashion is, who can stump the teacher? In my class in the past, I used a did you know question, but I like the who can stump the teacher idea because it would be students coming up with the questions, asking you to see if there's something you don't know. My hope would be that you'll have your diligent students who use this time to ask legitimate questions of theirs that then other students can benefit from hearing. But then I also hope it provides your extroverts the space to come up with some grandiose questions that could really be fun and engaging for all students. You can even have a mini trophy, like a little tree stump or something. But that's just an idea. If you want to run with it, go for it. The next classroom procedure, which is another Mandy one, is for absent students. Hear me out on this one though, as I step away from my total Captain Obvious status. The absent student procedure you already have will probably work great. So don't do a complete overhaul here unless you deem it necessary after listening to this lesson. But there are probably some spots you'll want to tweak so that it fits your flipped classroom structure a bit better. The biggest favor you could do for yourself and for your students is to both be proactive and to encourage your students to do the same when they are absent. Here's what I mean. I don't know about you, but absences were a total problem in my building, and to an extent still are. Not to mention, they are probably one of the biggest stressors for all teachers. So from day one of your course, and I even had this written in my syllabus, and that's what I mean by you being proactive, preach to your students that unless they have a legitimate absence like pneumonia, a family crisis, or just shy of their deathbed, they should do their best to come to class completely caught up on the calendar outside of what they missed in class. Why, you ask? Because students will certainly ask this question. Because they can. That's such a beautiful aspect of the flipped classroom. It's accessible and flexible, so take advantage of that by doing your due diligence and be caught up even when you need to miss a day here and there. This next one is not a new one, but I've always loved this one best for absences. Ask 3, then me. This helps avoid a student coming straight to you saying, "Did we do anything in class yesterday?" Cue the hilarious but so accurate teacher memes, am I right? And then this third suggestion is from the amazing hub of Pinterest that I found years ago and made a handout of my own to work in my classroom. It's essentially a half piece of paper with the same questions on every single one that one student at a table completes for an absent student at their table or near their desk. I loved this one, and here's why. I caught many students completing one of these while you were out forms for a student that was near them or at their table without me prompting them to do so. And then when a negative Nancy student in the room would say, "Ugh, why are you doing that? Ugh," they said, "Because if I were absent, I would hope they'd do that for me. It's really helpful." Or, "Because I know he's going through some hard times right now and I want to help him out." Oh my word, seriously, pulls on my teacher heartstrings every time. Not to mention, it totally jives with my kindness and empathy focus of the year. As part of that half sheet slip of while you were out, if there were any handouts in class that day, the student would paper clip them to the half sheet and put them in their tables folder for the absent student to catch up on the next day when they returned. This last daily procedure could be at the end of the bell, where you ask students, "What's something you learned today?" I never found that one to lend my students going deep enough into their learning, so I tried to focus the review a bit more. But hear me when I say that you should be reviewing every single day. Okay, let me put it another way. I tried to scare my students. I didn't want my students getting too comfortable, and when I felt like they were getting too comfortable with the content, I would be sure to bring up a topic that I was betting most of them struggled with. And I would take that opportunity to say, hey, if you're giving me a deer in headlights look right now, then why didn't anyone ask about this during our questions time? My biggest suggestion here is to incorporate friendly cold calling. Cold calling gets a rather negative rap in the education realm, but I've seen research that shows it's one of the most effective strategies in holding students accountable for mastering the content. It still can go badly, so approach this one with caution. You could do the good old popsicle sticks with kids' names on them to ask a question and then pull a name to answer. I loved using the individual dry erase boards as well. I told the students the whiteboard was like their poker hand. They needed to keep it close to them so other students couldn't see them. And when I said, show me, everyone had to hold up their board even if it was blank. This gave me a quick gauge of the room, but also a gut check for students holding up blank boards. I tried to do this at least once per unit. And the last suggestion with this final pointer is to close the end of the bell, much like you closed your slides in each of your flipped videos, and that is with big takeaways. You could even have a slide up on the board with a suitcase that says, what are you taking away with you today? And each table has 1 minute to talk about a big takeaway, and then each table shares that biggest takeaway. Now, will you have time to do this every day? Maybe not. But my hope would be that you could do it to conclude each topic. And there you have it for lesson 2. So in this lesson, you learned about suggested procedures, daily procedures for your flipped classroom, including bell ringers and welcome work, getting students to ask questions, what to do with absent students, and then reviewing every day. Your take action piece is rather specific here. I would dare say that coming off of the last 2 modules where you were in big time content creation mode, you may be feeling the need to slow down a bit. I want to encourage you not to slow down too much just yet. This isn't necessarily the content of your flipped class, but it is just as important in making sure that the very reason why you are doing all this important work is not a waste or forgotten. One of your biggest whys for flipping was probably to be able to do more engaging things in the classroom. So don't underestimate this work from this lesson and in this module in setting up procedures that work in your flipped classroom. In the next lesson, I will be talking all about one of the most influential parts of my classroom, and that was enhanced due to flipping, and that is student reflection. Have you ever taken some time for students to really reflect, whether that was on a test or just in general, but then felt super rushed because it was taking too much time and therefore was a total failure? Well, that's because it really does take time. But remember, you now have it. So let's talk about ways to make that time really effective with student reflection. So once you're ready, go ahead and click next, and we'll see you in the next lesson.